Welcome live from Washington, D.C. It's the 8th of December, the year of our Lord 2020. You're in the War Room, John Fredericks Radio Network. We have a podcast that has over 22 million, I think 22.5 million downloads. One of the biggest podcasts in the world, thanks to you. And remember, the podcast is just one of our, I think, our seventh or eighth method. We're on Real America Voice, which is Dish Channel 219, Comcast 113. We're on Pluto, Roku, GTV, G News, Facebook, everywhere, YouTube. You can get us. We're ubiquitous, and we want to be ubiquitous. We want to make sure every place that you go, you can get access to the War Room at no cost to yourself. Okay, I want to go back to Raheem Kassam. We got Jack Posobiec as soon as we're got some technical issues. Jack Posobiec is going to join us. Raheem, just once again, with this whole battlefield and everything that's going on in this test of courage, and we're seeing so many people in these state legislatures right now when the spotlight's put on them, they're starting to wilt. You know, down in Georgia, we hear the report in this House of Delegates that, they're afraid that they're going to be doxxed. They're afraid that people are going to protest outside their house. They're afraid that they're going to be, yelled at in a grocery store. And so you're seeing that, and they're saying, we just want this to pass. We just want this to go, and let's get to January 5th and maybe we hold those 2 Senate seats. What Texas has done here is called out these guys for not doing their job originally. So I want to go back and reset quickly. Then I want to talk about the polling before I bring Posobiec in. Reset, how important do you think this Texas lawsuit is in driving the narrative?
On some of the things you've mentioned as well, Steve, just before I get back to Texas, number one, I want to make sure that people realize that they can get the show on rumble.com. It's a really important platform, and we're about 2,000 new followers away from hitting 150,000. So if you go to rumble.com and search Bannon's War Room, you can subscribe again. It's all free. It's all there. The second thing I want to make note of is what you just said about the wilting people in the state legislatures all around the country. There is not a single day that goes by where I don't get 50 messages of abuse, emails, texts, DMs, tweets, you name it. We get everything, tips to the submissions inbox on the site, threats, all of that. And that's been my life for the last 10 years. I don't understand how people get into frontline politics, party politics, whether it's a state level, national level, international level, and think to themselves, hey, this is all going to be smooth sailing. We're just going to cruise through this. Everything's going to work out. It's going to take home a nice salary, nice benefits, come out with a lot of nice networking contacts. That's not the way this works. And it's never going to be the way this works. And if anybody out there thinks about running for office, thinks it's going to be smooth sailing, thinks putting yourself in the public spotlight should be easy going, then you've got the idea of public service wrong. There are idiots, psychos, all sorts of things out there. Get over it.
But Raheem,
your job.
Until Trump and this populist movement came around and challenged. Remember, it's not Republican and Democrat anymore. It's globalist and nationalist. Before Trump came along and actually started to upend the cart and say, hey, this country, this is about, I'm president because of the managed decline of America by our elites, right, of both parties. They could hide out, and they're still prepared to hide out. Remember, the reason they're being exposed is because of the stealing of the massive landslide, the big victory of Donald Trump, particularly in Georgia. They could hide. I mean, their stock and trade. The party was just hide and kind of be the Washington Generals to the Democrats' Harlem Globetrotters, just to be there and be the nice losers, right? And to lose all the time. It was Trump that really energized that and turned it around. So that's why it's a shock. And now they're sitting there going, oh, well, we didn't sign up for this. We didn't sign up for really taking on the system. We didn't sign up for guys. Now we got to actually step forward and be courageous. They didn't do this. They signed up to be under the rock and just to get all the benefits it is for being in the swamp or being part of the political apparatus, whether it's at a state level or at a federal level. That's what Trump has upended. And here's the power of the deplorables. They're sitting there going, hey, that's not good enough anymore. You're going to have to step up or you're going to be removed. What say you, sir?
You also say, a lot of them didn't just sign up to be under the rock. A lot of them signed up after Trump to sit on Trump's back, right? Trump put the GOP on his back and carried it through. And now when he needs an assist, and the assist isn't even anything massive. It's do the job. It's enforce the law. It's uphold the Constitution. It's the basics that they subscribe to, that they swear an oath of office to, that so many of these people are struggling to do right now. Let's get back to Texas on that note and show the stark juxtaposition. This is not a small document. This is 150 odd pages of detail. I read you from the first 5 pages of the document there, some of the key quotes from it. There's a whole other 145 pages to go through of the facts, the statistics, the data, the timeline, everything that we've seen, everything that has been reported out, whether it's on the Pulse and Revolver and Gateway Pundit and all of these places, all the factually documented things you'll find in this. In fact, you could publish this as the book on how the election was stolen. That's how comprehensive it is. So I encourage everybody to go and check that out. And also, 2 things. If you're in one of the states that are named in the suit, make sure your legislators get that. Send it to them, call them, burn up their phones all day long today, saying, hey, what are you going to do about this? It's all here. It's all there. And if you're not in either of the states, any of the states mentioned, even better, why don't you go to your attorney general's office and ask them to join in with Ken Paxton's suit and say, hey, you didn't think the detail was there. You didn't think there was cause there. You didn't think it was material. Paxton's done it all. Here's the Texas AG. That's okay. Texas will do everything, all the hard, heavy lift for you. Why don't you join in on this suit? Join in the Supreme Court. The polling, Steve, bears this out, right? It bears out the fact that people are beginning to realize what happened here. You look at the Trafalgar Group's numbers on this and specifically went to Georgia and asked if the presidential elections were compromised enough to change the outcome. And nearly 54% of people said yes. Only 38% of people said no. A whopping 75% of Republican voters said yes, the presidential elections were compromised. And of course, I told you last night about the Just the News poll by Scott Rasmussen, which showed a plurality of registered voters saying that most media organizations have not bothered, have not done, worthy exploration of whether or not fraud took place. I went through the crosstabs this morning on that as well, and actually it would be higher were it not for the preponderance of its urban Democrats with government jobs who overwhelmingly say that the media has done a fine job in that poll, Steve.
Raheem, thank you very much. What's up on National Pulse today before we let you go?
Going through the whole of the Texas, we're going to have a bevy of guests going through the Texas lawsuit with us this afternoon at 3 p.m.
People from the Trump legal team are telling me this Texas lawsuit is extremely real. So this is something to pay attention to. National Pulse at 3 o'clock. Raheem, thank you very much for taking time out to join us. My co-host, Raheem Kassam. Okay, I want to go to Jack Posobiec now. Jack, before I get to Texas, you were the first one to alert me. I think you're the first guy. Jack Posobiec from One American News joins us. You were the first person, I think, to really drill down on the crosstabs of Trafalgar and bring up the point that, hey, 53% of the people in Georgia, 54%, believe that there was activity that changed the outcome of this. And you've seen the polling since then. Quinnipiac, you saw the Rasmussen poll last night. 40, 43, 44% of the American people think something went on here, and that's only increasing every day as more information comes out. How important do you think this Texas lawsuit is in helping to drive the narrative to get more accessibility to those Americans that may not be as into the details of this as people that are the normal war room posse?
Well, Steve, thanks again for having me on. And I think that what is coming out today, the fact that we were able to get this, right, the fact that 53% of the people in one state, Georgia, and Georgia's, of course, been a key state, has definitely been one of the cornerstones of this, that 53% there, we're seeing in the high 40s, mid 40s across the country. The fact now that Texas is saying, and Steve, remember, a lot of these cases, they've been filed, they've gone down. It's looked like a Trump thing, right? It's looked like a partisan thing, a Trump thing, but we're talking about public opinion. We're talking about how this looks in terms of perception. The perception now, when Ted Cruz came in last week, and I talked about how important that was, and Texas has been the key now, because now you've got Ken Paxton coming forward saying, we are going to sue other states. people are attracted to, they notice action. They notice when something gets traction. That's why the catchphrase of the War Room here is action, action, action. When people see actions, when people see people like Ted Cruz, Ken Paxton, these are serious players. These are not people that are just, dropping bombs on Twitter all day. They're people who have serious positions of authority and power, certainly in legal circles with Ted Cruz's past and currently with attorney Ken Paxton. It wouldn't surprise me if Ted Cruz and Ken Paxton had one or more phone calls on this. And I think that Ted probably knew that this was coming when he signed that letter last week, that we are now starting to see a lot of action get out there, because first it was talk, right? That was smoke. This is fire.
The left is clearly going to go crazy about this and saying, "Hey, today's safe harbor. This is another form of desperation." They couldn't get any traction with the Rudy Giuliani circus going state to state. They've been thrown out everywhere at the lower court level, at the state courts. They're all wrapped around the axle, and this is a Ken Paxton trying to just become a grandstander with the biggest grandstander, Ted Cruz. How do you respond to that?
Well, look, safe harbor is not in the Constitution. I can pull out my pocket copy of the Constitution, as I'm sure you can, and I can't find the word safe harbor anywhere in there. This is a congressional procedure that they put forward to make the election, to streamline the process. But the only constitutional date that's in there is January 20th. And of course, when a crime is committed, and some of this stuff that's being talked about is criminal, other parts of it are legal when it comes to, for example, the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court ruling that they weren't going to allow a challenge to one of their laws, which was passed and changed unconstitutionally, right? That doesn't make that law constitutional. None of these things are made constitutional because you go past a certain date. That's not the way our law works. That's not the way our system works. And that's actually something that Ken Paxton brings up in a broader sense, because, again, he's talking about those 4 states out there. He's saying that, look, this process is set up to be followed constitutionally by the U.S. Constitution, a compact of states. I've always said this about Texas. One of my favorite things about Texas, and I say this as a Yankee, but one of my favorite things about Texas is that even now, so many years after Texas joined the Union, they still kind of view their relationship with the United States as an agreement. They say, we could go back to being the Republic of Texas someday. And I think they still honor and respect that agreement that was made with Texas. And part of that was, of course, the choosing of the president, the selection of the president. And they're looking around the country and they're saying, look, these states, these 4 states in particular, had problems with how they continued and how they certified their process. We feel that what they did was illegal, it was unconstitutional, and it was a breach of contract, that contract that was made with Texas when they joined the Union. And so I really just have to give, what can I say? As a Pennsylvanian, I got to say it. God bless Texas.
Hey, Jack, hang on for a second. I want to keep you for a few questions over the break. I want to go back to some of this polling and also talk about Wisconsin, some of the other areas. Your reporting has been amazing. Jack Posobiec from One American News. We're going to take a short commercial break. Jack Posobiec will join us on the other side. And, of course, the hero of the Right to Life movement, Jason Jones. All of that next. War and Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
We're here in the War Room. We've got Jack Posobiec from One American News. So, Jack, in this polling that you see, what I think McLaughlin had 58% of people in Georgia wanted a special session, 54% in Trafalgar on the crosstabs thought that there was illegal activity that shifted the vote in Georgia. You're seeing now, whether it's Rasmussen or Quinnipiac, you're seeing anywhere from 40 to 43, 44% of the American people that think that, hey, this thing was stolen. Where do you think Texas in this lawsuit and other issues? I want to go to Wisconsin. I know they've got the General Assembly is actually, I think for the first time, the House and the Senate are going to have joint hearings this week on, I think, Friday to take testimony on the very specific steal that happened in Wisconsin that they know they caught them, right? How do you think the awareness of the American people and the polling start to shift over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, Steve, the American people, there's one thing that's more important to them than, politics, that's more important than what's on your favorite TV show. And that, of course, is going to be the issue of fairness. The American people believe that fairness is paramount. When we watch sports, we want sports to be fair. We want the refs, we want the umpires, we want it all to be fair, right? And so when people are told that there was a steal, there was a cheat, there was a problem, their ears prick up a little bit. And then what they're going to see as they start to go beyond the punditry of all this, when they really start to hear, I think when the American people hear that basic elements of certification and fairness were not followed in this election, things like signature checking, things like registration checking, things like making sure that a real person voted with a real ballot, they're going to say, wait a minute, and I've talked to people who are first-time voters. They're asking me, isn't this stuff done after every election? Aren't audits done after every election? What do you mean you don't check the signatures? What do you mean you're not checking IDs, right? The Canadians are laughing at us. The Australians are laughing at us when it comes to this because they hold secure elections by instituting these basic fairness and insurity policies, right? We of course criticize other countries like Belarus and Venezuela for not doing the same things that we don't do ourselves in the States. It's incredible. And Texas has been, and of course it was going to be Texas, always going to be Texas. They're the first ones to step up and say, well, look, we got a problem here and we're going to do something about it. The American people need to hear about this. They need to hear that these basic elements of fairness was not done, that counting was held in the middle of the night without observers present. Observers were told to leave, were asked to leave. They knew the observers left. And keep in mind that, I love this response. They said, well, we didn't tell the observers to leave. They left on their own volition. This is Georgia. And you say, okay, but if you're counting the ballots without observers, you're breaking the law. Yep. You are breaking the law, not them for leaving.
What the Democrats
onus is on you because you're counting the ballots.
What Biden and the Democrats have to understand, and now that you're getting 43, 44, and it's going to get higher as more comes out, this is a scar that will not heal. There's only one way to do this, and that's to unite to get to the bottom of it. You must unite to get to the bottom of it. And if they don't participate, if they continue to try to force the steal, this is a scar that's just not going to heal. They have to understand this. I want to shift, Jack, for a moment. I know you're a naval intelligence officer. One of the reasons I've always admired you is you speak perfect Mandarin, you read Mandarin. You have one of the most in-depth understandings of the Chinese Communist Party in Washington, D.C. Very sophisticated. Talk to me about this video that's gone around. I think Tucker actually talked about it last night. We've had it for a week or so. The people at the whistleblower movement, New Federal State, have been all over this. Talk to us about this interpretation, because we're hearing Jason Jones. Jason is one of the leaders of the Right to Life movement. And Jason Jones is now, I think, going to be here at the end of this week. There's going to be a rally. There's coming together of the Human Rights Coalition about the Chinese Communist Party as a transnational criminal organization. Remember, everything, all the economic carnage, all the capital markets carnage, the blowing up the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, the hundreds of thousands of people that have died because of the CCP virus in the United States, and the hundreds of thousands to millions worldwide, is because of the Chinese Communist Party. And now even the mainstream media is catching up with the fact that, oh, hey, guys like Bannon and Miles Guo, maybe they were right. Maybe Dr. Yan was right. Maybe the Chinese Communist Party went to a very sophisticated way to try to spread the blame to other people. You don't need to be morons. Absolutely, we know what happened, right? The only question is, was it deliberately let go as part of a bioweapons program, or did it inadvertently leak out because of a gain-of-function experiment they should not have been doing as part of a biological weapons program? But it doesn't take away what should be the accountability they have for this. This is 79 years when the United States knew how to put blame and accountability onto people that attacked it. On December 8th of 1941, this is the day of infamous speech. And I think, 3.5 years later, the Empire of Japan had been crushed because they had attacked Pearl Harbor. Right now, we have a Pearl Harbor every day on the deaths of the CCP virus. And what do you think that is? That's overblown or undercounted or overblown? The reality is this was the Chinese Communist Party. So in our face, I guess this was a professor. Jack, you speak Mandarin, so you're able to go through the thing, not with the English translation. You could actually listen to it yourself. They're essentially mocking the United States to say, hey, anytime we've had a problem before Trump showed up, we've got friends in high places. It takes us a couple of days or a week to sort out any of our problems. The reason is we're dialed in. We're dialed in Wall Street, and we're dialed in corporate America, and we're particularly dialed in Washington, D.C. We are hardwired into the system, so there's no problems. Walk us through what happened and why this has gotten to be so controversial.
Well, Steve, and I do congratulate those who did the translation on that. I think it's a fantastic job. And for tracking down the specific video, this is a very high level TV show, very popular TV network in China. It's watched by all the elites, but it's also watched by a lot of folks that are in Chinese leadership in terms of business, in terms of economics, what they do. Now, he's a professor. Di Dongsheng is a professor at Renmin University. And what people need to understand is that there's the C9 in China. The C9 is like China's Ivy League. Renmin University is not part of that. Renmin University was directly set up by the CCP in 1949 following the creation of Red China, Communist China, the Mao Zedong's takeover. It was, I think about the timeline, right? China's goes communist October 1st. They established the state. By December 16th, they passed the resolution establishing Renmin University. This is the party school. This is where the cadre come out of. This is where all the apparatchiks come out of, right? This isn't necessarily the elite of China, but they're the apparatchiks or the cadres. This is where the current CEO of the Bank of China is out of Renmin University. There's a member of the Politburo on Renmin University, the one female who's there right now. A lot of the banks, chairman of the Agricultural Bank of China, chief economist at Morgan Stanley of China, Wang Qing, out of Renmin University. So this is a key. This isn't some like podunk, out in the provinces university or something like that. This is key. And this is a guy who knows absolutely what he's talking about. And it's a peek behind the veil. It's a peek behind the veil for people to understand how the relationship between China and the United States has worked for almost 40 years now. And what he said, and I thought this was key, what he said was when Trump declared the trade war on China, they viewed it as a breach of contract with America. And be very clear to people what that means is they felt that since the 1990s or so, there's been this understanding that America would outsource its manufacturing to China and then would supplant China with essentially purchasing those goods. So they get the jobs, we get the cheap consumer goods, right? That's the idea. They're going to be, and not just for America, but also for Europe and others. They're going to be sort of a vast, low wage, low income worker supply for the United States for manufacturing and for all of Europe. What China has done, of course, as we know, is they've been stealing our technology, and they don't want to only be that low supply of low wage labor. So they're moving in and they're saying, we want to take over. But Trump was the only one who stopped that. Trump upset the apple cart. Trump changed everything that was going on here. And he specifically says, now that we see Biden's election, right, and he has that big smile on his face, we know things are going to go back the way they were. Because look at Hunter Biden and look at all of his global securities companies. How do you think he got those? And he just sort of leaves it out there with a pregnant pause and a smile on his face. Steve, this is a peek behind the curtain into how China controls us. And there's another story that's out today about a Chinese influence operation. Eric Swalwell was caught up in this. Some other members were caught up in this.
BGY.
People need to understand that these stories go together. You have to put them together. This is the recruitment pipeline for what this professor is talking about.
Jack, how do people get access to you on your Twitter, Parler? I guess you're on Twitter. We got about 15 seconds.
Yeah, Jack Posobiec, at Jack Posobiec, and Parler, just Posobiec.
Posobiec both is one of the top reporters on the entire Steele, also one of the top reporters, if not the top reporter, on the Chinese Communist Party and its influence into the United States of America. Jack, thank you very much for joining us. Jack Posobiec from One American News, one of the top young reporters in this town. Incredible. Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to come back. Jason Jones, they want to call the CCP a transnational criminal organization. Remember, they're one of the parties in back of the Steele. Then Jesse Morgan, the brave truck driver of the missing ballots. All next, War Room.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room live from Washington, D.C. We're going to have Jesse Morgan, the great hero, who stepped forward at a lot of risk to himself and his family to talk about this, the tractor trailer with the missing 144,000 to 288,000 votes. We're going to get to him in a second. I want to bring in Jason Jones. Everybody knows Jason as the head of Movie to Movement, one of the great filmmakers in the conservative movement, great film distributors, a leader in the Right to Life movement. But Jason, we just had Jack Posobiec on here talking about the CCP, which is in back of this virus that's basically cut through America, destroyed our economy, turned upside down this election, allowed people to essentially try to steal President Trump's victory by using the CCP virus as an excuse to do these mail-in ballots, of which there are a lot of nefarious activity around. But I want to go something. You're now in back of an effort. I saw these amazing graphics this week. Is there going to be a rally or a march, or is there some get-together, a conference in Washington this week to try to name the Chinese Communist Party as a transnational criminal organization? And that's being led by a disparate group of human rights that normally you wouldn't think would ever work together. What's going on here?
Yeah, Steve, that's exactly what's happening. You have activists, free Hong Kong activists, Kazakhs, Uyghurs, Mongolians, pro-life organizations, groups on the left and the right, all coming together to tell the truth. The CCP is a transnational criminal organization. Scott Perry has this legislation. Now is the time. If we don't admit this truth now, this is a truth. Sometimes it may not be prudent to say something, but you have to look a nightmare in the face. You let in with the Wuhan virus. This virus is a demon. The CCP is the demon. The CCP is the demon that on December 22nd, 1949, invaded East Turkestan. In May of the next year, invaded Tibet, that starved 60 million Chinese, that hunted my mother-in-law when she was 4 years old with her family as they were fleeing the communists coming into where she was living in China. This is a demon. The demon has to be looked head on. I saw that video from that professor. Although my wife and my family, they're Chinese, I don't speak Mandarin, I didn't believe it. I sent it to my mother-in-law, friends of mine that were linguists. They said it was a beautiful translation. And that video that you and Jack were talking about, I think, tells us the sense of urgency. But I would also like to say, I would hope everyone would call their senators. We need to get the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act through the Senate into President Trump's desk. President Trump has been the human rights president. December 10th is International Human Rights Day. Really, President Trump, Pompeo, Ambassador Brownback, his politicals at USAID, they have been the only ones in the world really focused on the needs of the most vulnerable people, from Bangladesh to South Africa, from Mount Sinjar to occupied East Turkestan. And God forbid, in February, Joe Biden is president, those concentration camps in East Turkestan could become death camps, like we saw happen in Nazi Germany in 1943. So there's a real sense of urgency here, and that's why we'll be in Washington, D.C.
So, Jason, real quickly, I only got a couple of minutes, but I know that you've married into a Chinese family. what I have said for years is that the biggest victims of the Chinese Communist Party are the Chinese people, are Lao Beijing, old 100 names. Their brutality, and this professor laid it out about the business model. The business model is off the slave labor of Lao Beijing, of the hardworking Chinese. That's the way the global business model works. It's the reason that everybody else is a serf, because they drive down global wages by essentially making the Chinese worker a slave. What is it, since you've married into a Chinese family, tell our audience about how the basic normal Chinese people think of the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, my father-in-law in 1949 was at the University of Pennsylvania when China fell, never went home. My mother-in-law was a little girl and fled. Her father had to hide her in a monastery with her sister till he could get her out. He was a general in the Nationalist Army. They ate out of garbage cans in Hong Kong for years. She became a very successful model. You know, my father-in-law and mother-in-law in the 60s, you have to picture this, Steve. My mother-in-law came from poverty. She married this big movie producer from a prominent family. Where did he take her for their honeymoon? Paris, London, Rome. He took her to Williamsburg, Old Town Williamsburg, to share with her the beauty of this country. That's all. Oh, by the way, my mother-in-law is the biggest Steve Bannon fan. I'm not even going to tell her I'm going to be on. She'll see it. You know, my grandfather's deathbed, we weren't allowed to bring up the Korean War. He fought in World War II. We could talk to him about that. He was an infantryman, but there was a rule: never talk about Korea around my grandfather. On his deathbed, I was crying, and he told me not to cry for him. He said, you know, just think of all the young boys that died in the war that never had children or grandchildren. And I said, those young men that died with you in World War II, Grandpa? He said, well, and Korea. And I said, those young American boys? And then my grandfather began to cry. And he said, all those Chinese boys, too, that they sent at us with no weapons. All those boys. And he looked off into the distance, and tears rolled down his cheeks. He never knew that his great-grandchildren would be Chinese. You know, when we fight the CCP, we're fighting to free the Chinese. We're fighting for the Uyghur. We're fighting for the Tibetans. This is who we're fighting for, but also we're fighting for our posterity. When they shoved GATT 94 and MFN for China down our throats in the 90s, decimating the American working class, turning the heartland of America into the Rust Belt, they said China will become more like us. We're becoming more like China. So the war against the CCP is for our posterity, but we're shoulder to shoulder with the most beautiful people in China, as you have demonstrated, Steve.
Jason, how do people get access to you so they can find out more about what's happening with this human rights coming together to proclaim the Chinese Communist Party as a transnational criminal organization?
Well, you can go to our website, or you go to my podcast, The Jason Jones Show, wherever you watch podcasts. A couple of days ago, I interviewed the Prime Minister in exile, Salih Hudaya of Chinese-occupied East Turkestan. And we go over the whole event that's coming up and how you can get there, and the details are in the show notes. Or our website, thegreatcampaign.org.
Are you on Twitter or Parler?
Yes, The Jason Jones Show, at Jason Jones Show.
Okay, Jason, thank you so much. We'll have you on the day of the event. Thank you very much. Jason Jones, a great American patriot.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Now I want to turn to another patriot that's become we talked about courage being contagious and courage being the most important of all the virtues, because it's upon courage that all the other virtues rest. I want to talk about courage. You got to talk about Jesse Morgan, the truck driver that stepped forward to really do this expose and really blow up the heads of half the nation. So, Jesse, let me ask you, where does it stand right now? You came forward, I think, a couple of weeks ago. It was at Phil Klein had a press conference in Northern Virginia. You stepped forward. You gave a very succinct analysis of what happened, what you felt happened. Bring us up to date. What is I know you've been named in a couple of suits as your affidavits or the information, but where does it stand investigation wise? Are people coming to you? Are authorities coming to you and say, hey, we need to sit down and interview you? What is going on to find out where these ballots are and what they were used for?
You know, it's really funny that you say that. I've been interviewed. So I had a meeting with the FBI. was it the OGI or some agency from the postal office, and a few other people, and so basically the interview. Okay, so here I am, the witness. Basically gets like kind of like interrogated, I guess you would say, which is cool. I understand they're doing their job, but so I give them what I saw, what happened to me, what I had done. And what they want to do instead of focusing on the picture, they want to focus over here and try to figure out how I came on TV. It's really sad, to be honest.
Hold it. Explain that to people. They weren't so much focused on the trailer from that gets filled up with ballots in Bethpage, New York, and then carted into Pennsylvania, goes missing after you're kind of given the runaround. They want to know how people got to you and how you came on TV?
Yeah, so basically, this is just how it feels, okay? So during the interview, I mean, I can understand where they're at, but basically, it's the one gentleman's kind of like mixing up my words or didn't understand what I was saying, and I speak pretty clear. I mean, you saw obviously probably the press conference that day, and I didn't tell him anything different than what I told everyone that day. But for some reason, it was hard to comprehend that. But so I give this information, and then what they want to do with it, instead of investigating the information I gave, is go and start harassing my family, start asking questions of my family, how did I get here, or whatever, you know. And I just thought it was quite interesting where this gentleman's investigation took him, because it was, instead of going, you know, Bethpage, Harrisburg, Lancaster, the next day it was over here.
Well, did you feel that any of the investigation or any of the authorities have had any interest in going into the details to actually locate the trailer?
No, I honestly, God, I haven't felt like that at all. Nothing, and it's quite sad, and it blows my mind. You know, it's kind of like, and that's why I keep coming out, because I'm not going to allow this to get swept under the rug. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to keep coming out, and I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep standing up for America.
Jesse, here you've done this. You've been a driver for this service for a while. How often does a trailer of this size, and a tractor trailer, you've got the tractor, but a trailer of this size, how often do they go missing?
Never. Never. I mean, unless it's stolen, like, I mean, and chopped up in pieces or something, but never it goes stolen.
But I mean,
never
even
goes...
I know you talk to truckers, and you talk because camaraderie, etc. Have you ever heard a story of a trailer this size just going missing? I mean, as you've heard the scuttlebutt, is this a frequent thing that happens? Never happens, maybe happens once every 10 years? I mean, how often does something of this scale and size just disappear?
It doesn't happen. It does not happen. Trust me, it does not happen. I never had a trailer just go MIA on me. I never, in my whole career, never had that.
Jesse, if you would mind hanging over for a few minutes, we've got a short commercial break. We're going to come back with our guest, Jesse Morgan. And you want to talk about courage? You want to talk about grit? You want to talk about stick-to-itiveness? They've attacked him in every possible way. What did he just say? I'm not giving up. I'm not backing down, right? I wish the elected officials in the state of Georgia, the great state of Georgia, had 1 ounce of the courage of Jesse Morgan. If you had 1 ounce of his courage, we would have a special session down there, not a predetermined special session, but a special session that actually went into the facts. This is the power of Jesse Morgan. He's an average American. He's the common man. And the common man said, I've had a belly full of this, and I'm not putting up with it anymore. I'm holding the line. When we return, our guest, Jesse Morgan, we're trying to get Thomas King III, one of the lawyers putting in that amazing lawsuit for the Thomas More Society and Amistad Project in Pennsylvania. He's going to give us some analysis of what the great state of Texas is doing to drive the narrative. All next on War and Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
The managed decline of our country stops when working class people said, I've had enough. I've had enough. And this is what the revolution of Donald Trump in 2016. Look at the Chinese professor, the CCP professor. He said it all started in 2016. That's because Donald J. Trump had the backing of the deplorables. Not in the room, not in the deal. Donald Trump put you in the room and gave you voice. Courage is contagious. That was in Maricopa County, going door to door to find out who were not eligible to vote that voted. That's why you have the registrar down in Ware County, Georgia, saying these Dominion voting systems are not working. This is why you had the people sitting shoulder to shoulder with Rudy Giuliani giving testimony in Michigan about talking about how this vote was stolen. This is Knudsen and Spindall in Wisconsin, who refused to back down as two election officials, and that's why you're in court right now with a winning lawsuit. That's what Jesse Morgan represents. He's emblematic of the working man that's had a belly full of it and is not going to sit there. And when the authorities come to them, are they interested in where the trailer is? Are they interested in finding out where those ballots are? Are they interested in who ordered that? No, they are not. What they're interested in is rousting Jesse Morgan and finding out how Jesse Morgan got to the Thomas More Society. How did you get on stage with Phil Klein? How did that happen? Jesse, we've run out of time here.
How did it happen?
Yeah, well, no, I'm going to have you back because I want to go through that in detail. But I want to say thank you from our audience and from the entire nation. Trust me, brother, they're still going to come and try to rip your face off. But we're going to get you back either this afternoon or another episode to go through in detail. This is outrageous when the authorities are not looking for the trailer, but they're looking for how Jesse got on stage with the Thomas More Society with Phil Klein, a real lawyer who knows how to prosecute. Jesse, thank you very much for joining. I got to jump and do the thing. We're going to get you back on this afternoon or tomorrow, but you're and whatever you do, please hold the line. Don't back down.
Oh, I'm holding it. I'm holding it.
Explosive. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother. We're going to have you back on. I mean, the comment that they're not interested. They're not interested. They're not interested in finding out what's going on. They're interested in finding how he got on stage with Phil Klein. This is the scam. It's not a deep state. Don't tell me. I don't want to hear deep state. It's in your face. When they meet with him, are they interested in finding out where the trailer is? Are they interested in finding out why the trailer was in Bethpage and shows up in Harrisburg and shows up in Lancaster and it's now missing? Are they interested in that? No, they are not. You know what they're interested in? Hey, how did you hook up with Phil Klein? How did a grundoon like you, how did some guy like you get to Phil Klein? Who did this? Who's paying for it? Who's paying you? This is the outrageous nature, and it's not going. We're going to hold the line, and the numbers are coming our way. I want to go now to Thomas King III, who's in charge of this tremendous lawsuit in Pennsylvania. We've only got a couple of minutes, Thomas. I want to get an update on your lawsuit, but most importantly, Texas dropped a bombshell today that essentially dovetails a lot of what you guys are working on. Give me your assessment of what you think about this Texas lawsuit.
Well, it's pretty similar, Steve, to what we're trying to do in Pennsylvania. Of course, all the likely suspects from the other side have begun to enter their appearances. There's a deadline today at 4 o'clock in the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania for them to respond. So it's similar to what's going on in Texas. So under the guise of don't mess with Texas, don't mess with Jesse either, but don't mess with Texas, Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, filed really a very, very thoughtful and very forceful filing with the United States Supreme Court today. That action asks the court for permission to file his bill of complaint against the states of Pennsylvania and Georgia and Wisconsin and Michigan, and would set aside those states' electors from participating in the Electoral College, or it would seek an injunction to stop the vote from taking place. It's very similar to what we're doing in Pennsylvania. It's well researched, it's well thought out, it's very important. He cites three reasons for that, essentially, that it was the courts in each of those states that created election law, not the legislatures. He also cites the effect that it had, the effect that these actions had intrastate within the states, and ultimately the disenfranchisement of people in states like Texas who didn't get involved in this monkey business that went on in these other states. So it's a very forceful piece that's been filed by the state of Texas. My hat's off to them. There's a lot of work went into it, and it's very well done.
Thomas, what's the process of yours? I know they got a 4:00 deadline, but walk our audience through. We got about a minute and a half left, 90 seconds. Walk us through where you go from 4:00 this afternoon and how we actually get you in front of a judge and ultimately, hopefully, the Supreme Court.
At 4:00 this afternoon, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, through the governor and the Secretary of the Commonwealth, which is the equivalent of our Secretary of State, along with the Democratic electors, are required to respond to say what they have to say about our complaint. At that point, I would expect that an order will come down from the Commonwealth Court. I suspect that we'll either get a quick briefing schedule or we'll get a hearing one way or the other. We're prepared in Harrisburg at the drop of a hat for a hearing. We have witnesses. Jesse, who's just on with you, may well be one of our witnesses. So that's the procedure, and we'll know more at 4:00 today, Steve.
Thomas, how do people? I know you don't have social media. What's the what do you know the website for Thomas More? Or should we just send people to Amistad Project?
Yeah, Amistad Project at Thomas More Society. It's Thomas More More out of Chicago. So if you get to their website, you'll find it. I'm not a social media guy.
I could tell that. Thomas, thank you very much for joining us here on War and Pandemic. Look forward to having you back. Good luck today at 4:00.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Okay, action-packed day, a lot more happening. This is supposed to be Safe Harbor Day. They're blowing through the Safe Harbor. We're in courts everywhere. We're in front of state legislatures everywhere. There's nothing but action happening, and I got to tell you, as long as we got the Liz Harrises out in Maricopa County going door to door, as long as you got the Jesse Morgans that refuse to be browbeaten by the authorities, we're going to win this. Just hold the line. Until 5:00 this afternoon, Stephen K. Bannon, you've been in the War Room.